This is what we're going to see in the final game between Magnus Carlsen and Duda. But leading up to it, we are going to see so many games at so many different levels. We're going to have a couple of players at the 1000 level, then 1400, 1900, 2600, and then all the way up to Magnus Carlsen in the final game. What is this video all about? Welcome to From Chess Beginner to Chess Master. First game we're going to look at will be at 1000 level, and then we're going to see the final game featuring Magnus. And in this video we are going to see the same opening in each game, the Grand Prix attack, but more importantly we are going to see this position in each game: e4, c5, and then knight to c3. So let's begin. First up, we have both players rated 1000. What are we going to see in this video? The typical positions, the typical mistakes, the typical moves that every player is making at this kind of level. e4, c5 with the Sicilian, knight c3, and now f4. We have the Grand Prix attack, 2 pawns in the center. Maybe this player is not familiar with this position and now lashes out with e5. You can take it to open a file. White chooses to get space. Knight f3. This bishop is going to find it very difficult to get in the game. The bishop, it can go to c4, which looks really nice on this diagonal. He chose to play bishop b5 and now a6, kicking the knight away. Kicking the bishop away, I mean. But there's no point playing a move like this. Already this is an opening mistake at the 1000 level. Take. I'm going to take the knight anyway. Why encourage me? By the way, here is a typical opening trap. Do not retreat your bishop, because after this you just get it trapped in the game. The guy took, and now castle. Castle is the pawn on e5 free? No, because he set up an opening trap with queen d4 check, and now you've just chucked a knight. But the game goes on. You've got this gigantic pawn structure to play against that bishop. Hit the queen, hit the knight, take, and now f6 was needed. Trying to open up the black king. Take. The queen and the bishop can both come in the game. However, going back 3 moves, white chose to play c3 in order to get this gigantic pawn chain. f6 played, e6, shutting out that bishop. Queen in, bishop h6 coming next. King gets out the way. Rook f3, really good move. Typical rook lift you want to look out for in your own games in order to get the rook in the attack. Facing the king, but rook h3. Double purpose move. You stop a check, but you also attack. White is now threatening this sneaky move, queen in to g6. So if you play a nothing move, queen g6 is so dangerous. Coming in on h7. You can block it with h6, but now you take on h6. You sacrifice in style. Check. Game over. Black has to block with the queen, but then you can pick it up. Now back to the game. Let's go back 5 moves or so. Black blundered with g5. En passant is now possible, and white is now crashing through on h7. Keep the queen. Move the queen to g5, I mean. And you still need the queen to defend on h7. But he blundered bishop e7. So it turns out what I'm learning from this game is that the 1000 rated player is being put under a lot of pressure and has crumbled. By the way, this is possible as well. And then you can take with check. Rook takes, pawn check. And then you can get the queen in. You can take the bishop, which is what was played. But a brilliant move is this. Mate in 3. Sack your rook in style. Check. And then here. All squares covered. Let's go back 3 moves. Rook takes bishop played. g7, hit the rook. Take. And then queen in. Bishop here, threatening queen f8. So you block. If you played a nothing move, then that is game over. And then take. White's going to be winning. Here, take. Rook for bishop. So going back a few moves, no. Black correctly blocks. The queen's now come off, and 4 versus 4, so nothing here, but white has 3 versus 1. White is up 2 pawns, rook to the center, game over. That's the next move. Defending. Get the king in as well. Get the pawns rolling. So if you play a move like this, moving the bishop, this is a lot closer, by the way. But the guy resigned because now you've got this brilliant move. It's not about attacking the bishop. If you take me, I'll take you. I've still got an eye on this. I'm going to take this next. Going back 2 moves here. If you move the bishop, now we can save the bishop. This is the important point. It's a brilliant rook swing where the rook is now on e7 and you defend g7. So that is the first game. Next one. Couple of rated players here. 1400 versus 1300. Let's go again. We get the same opening. That is what this video is going to be all about. And then we will see Magnus Carlsen versus Duda in the final game. Stay tuned for that. If you want to skip to certain players rated 1900 or 2300 or Magnus, timestamps are in the description below. Now bishop b5. White is threatening to double the pawns. Black allows it. You can play this. Game goes on. But bishop g7 played. In this type of position, in this type of structure, double the pawns. Now you're playing against this, which is something I kept mentioning in the first game. By move 7, you can see all of White's moves have been easy and good. 2 pawns in the center, 2 knights out, and you're safe. d3. Playing against this. A good middle game strategy is if your opponent has a bishop that you don't, you put your pawns on the color of that bishop to restrict its movement. Queen e1 is possible. No need to play a move like h3. I wouldn't have played this, but the 1400 went for this. The reason is it's not a threat. You can get the queen out of the way. Because after this, I mean, you could encourage the capture, which is unnecessary. You could play this move, knight h4, which we're going to see in the game soon. If black does something, f5, we have this beautiful idea of just trapping the bishop. h3 is next. h3, 1, 2, just literally trapping the bishop. Going back a few moves to this point. You don't need to play h3, it's a wasted move. Rook e8 doesn't really do anything. Queen e1 definitely does something. Typical move in these kind of positions, swing the queen over. By the way, this is only possible because the f pawn has moved, which was back on move 3. When this move is played, look ahead. The queen can actually come in the attack, which is exactly what we see here. Knight h4. Not only the queen, the knight actually goes to the square because we have this idea. Blunting the bishop, opening up the rook as well. f5. It really is restricting the opponent's bishop that you don't have. Rook b1, class move from the 1400. Defend your b2 pawn, which is white's only weak point. Then you have the chance to get the bishop in the game. e6, good move. So, you know, a few moves ago, I was saying rook e8 was doing nothing. I think I was being harsh because you're putting your rook on this file. It's going to open up. e6 is a pawn break. But I think this pawn break works out well for white. So many ideas. You can come in, knight sack later with the queen. The bishop can come in here, here, here. Queen, rook, sack on f6 later if there's enough. For example, bishop here. And then you're already threatening this capture. The guy went queen f2, maybe e5. The knight can come into e4 as well. Rook f8 to defend. So if you play a move like bishop here, you can retreat. It's very important the rook is now back on the square, even though I say that. You can't do this. Nice tactic there, winning the queen. So let's go back a few moves. To this point, king out the way. Bishop f4, hit the pawn. Black is creating some play here, attacking the knight on c3, but you shut it out with e5. Class move from the 1450 player. If you take, the bishop just comes back and everything is working out in white's favour. Bishop and queen are going to attack this pawn. This pawn means this bishop is awful. This knight can now go to e4. These two are doing nothing. And this knight might come back in the game, here or here, which we will see in a few moves' time. All for the cost of a pawn. Brilliant move from the 1450 here. e5, d5, and now the knight comes back to g5. Queen g3, wasted move. You don't need to put the queen there. Might as well go straight here. 1, 2, queen h7, game. So wasted move here, in my opinion. Knight b5. Long journey from the knight. I mean, white has a chance just to get rid of it. He goes knight g5. We're coming in here. 1, 2, game over. So even here, you might just go here. There's no time to take the rook. You're going to go for mate. That's one option. Rook moves away. Get rid of that dangerous knight, and now crashes through in style. Beautiful game from the 1450. Beautiful. Another option is this, by the way, just coming in here. That's clean. If you move the king out the way, bishop e3, that's clean. Just one move threats, which are too dangerous. You come in here. And you can't do that because check. Or even better, this and then check. And there's no way, there's nothing black can do to defend that pawn. If you just come across, we can take with check, take, and you are just completely winning. Just want to show you this cool finish. I know white is up a knight, but after bishop g5 check, it is true the king can run away. But if he went the wrong way, we got two mates. That's mate, but I wanted to show this one. Beautiful mate here. The knight is mate. Due to the pin on the F file, every square is covered. So that's really nice. Now back to the game. Knight takes f7. And bishop d2 check was missed. Retreating move to pick up the queen, but I think he went for this. Because if you go back, that's mate. Perhaps this is what the 1450 went for, because, I mean, who cares about winning the queen when in a couple moves time you're going to win the game. The king runs away, that's fine. Check, check, and take. And this is the perfect game situation where you are up material. You've got two pawns, and you've got a kingside attack. You are still hunting the king, I mean. It's the perfect situation. The king runs away. Threaten to win the bishop. Threaten to win the bishop. Take the rook next. And after this, game over. Because here, white now takes with check. Check again. And I think that's a simple move. That's what I would have played without thinking. But the 1450 played a class move. Just rook f7. Just like that. And then there's going to be mate on the back. You take a rook with check, which is always dangerous, but after king h2, there's no coordination between the queen and the rook. No way to stop these two, and it is mate the next move. You can pick either mate, really. Game over. Beautiful game. Next up, we have the 1990 against the 1980. So a couple of 1900s. Let's see what they've got here. And now we get this situation. By the way, just a minor point. If you play f4 now, black has this extra option, d5. So don't go for this. A better move order is here and then f4. So black actually had another option to strike in the center right away. Let's go to the game. Bishop e2 played. Bishop b5 is what we saw in the first two games, but I'm giving you two options in this video. Keep switching between them in your own games. Never be fixed with one setup. I remember reading the book, The Moves That Matter, by Jonathan Rowson. There's a section on Magnus, and he mentions a really cool quote. Having preferences means having weaknesses. So never be fixed with one opening setup. Or else your opponents can take advantage of you because they know you always play that setup. Mix it up. Let's go bishop e2, castle, and now d3. Looks a bit passive, doesn't it, this bishop? But we still have the same idea. And this bishop can actually tuck back to be a useful defender. King out the way. Useful move in these kind of positions. No silly check on the dark diagonal. That's why a lot of top players, they tend to sidestep their king once they've moved their f-pawn. A useful move. a6 getting space. White stops that. Rook b8, useful move. Planning to get space. And now lots of options here. Queen can swing over. Like in the first game. Push the pawn. Bishop in. Let's go. Knight h4. Just like we saw in the previous game. f5 is coming up. Get space. Take, take. And now queen. Now here we go. f5. Again blunting this bishop. b4. Just want to talk about this option. If you hit the bishop, it comes back and is actually a useful defender. If you hit the knight, now we can retreat to challenge the strong knight. And if the knights come off, well, the game goes on. We've got rid of black's dangerous knight. So let's go back a few moves. After this, f5, b4, drop the knight back, and a good way to defend it is knight e3, class move here. Couple of options here or here to remove the defender. Not the best move from black because it's a dangerous knight. Trades. It's a big question in any chess game. What piece do you trade and when do you trade it? In this position, I think the 1900 got it wrong. You should not be trading off your strong knight for this bishop. I would keep it there. I would play a move like this or this and then this. Keep it flexible. The knight is a beautiful piece. Maybe here. Yeah, control this square, looking for a way to open up. This trade is not the best. However, the game goes on. Black is after a pawn break. Knight g4. Good move. It's not really about a trade. Well, it is. It's about getting rid of a key defender to the black king. Knight sidesteps. One option was to retreat that way. And now knight h6 check. Look at this journey. Knight all the way to h6. The knight is so dangerous on here, this square. You get rid of it. Take, take. You can move the rook, but the knight was played. Knight retreat was chosen. Queen in the game, and it looks like we're just sacking. I mean, if you play a nothing move like here, I think we're coming through. Here. Please bear this idea in mind when playing these kind of structures. So that is coming up. However, Queen d7 was played, and this is a blunder. White now just plays a two-move tactic. We can actually take this knight. Normally, you would never ever take this knight because this bishop is so strong. But after this capture, you cannot play because it's game over. f6 check, you win the queen. So going back to the game, after this capture, save the queen, but then you save the bishop. Drop the queen back, and in this position, lots of arrows. Just want to explain. The truth is, white has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces in the attack, and black is doing nothing. You don't even need this rook in the game. Queen sidestep, great move. So then you are now threatening to come in. Take, take, take. Game over. The guy resigned because if you continue with a capture, check, and then rook f7, game over. Now we got 2660 versus 2300. Gatakamsky has the white pieces. Same opening. That's the purpose of this video. Stay tuned. One more game until we get to Magnus Carlsen versus Jan Duda, Polish #1. Bishop e2. g3, bishop g2. Nope. We go back to the first setup we saw in the first couple of games. Bishop to b5. Threatening to double. The 2300 moves the knight again. This is one of the critical ways to play against this setup. Drop the bishop back. Gata faces f7. Castle, and now knight e7. I played this setup before with black. You want to put the knight on c6, bring his brother into the game, defending your asset on d4. d3, typical. Playing against the bishop, getting space, stopping black getting space, b5 coming up. Time to get rid of the knight on d4, changing the structure completely. Now we have double d pawns, knight retreats, and now b5 getting space, take, take, we drop it back. So what do we have here? If we look at the bishops, well actually each other's, white and black's pawn structures restrict each other's light squared bishops. Notice black is also putting lots of pawns on dark squares, so I would say the game is finely balanced right now. Any pawn push might increase the strength of the light squared bishop. It's black in these kind of positions should want to point out some idea. You might want to just go f5. Let's say here. If you take, you can take back probably with a knight. And now that pawn, in these kind of structures, you don't move that pawn because you restrict this bishop. Just an idea to bear in mind. Why do I say this? It's because I've played f5 in these kind of positions with black. King out the way, classic move. h5, getting space, getting more space, but please bear this in mind. That pawn is too far advanced. Gata fixes the structure because if you castle, that drops now. I don't think what the 2300 did was correct. So Gata fixes it. Bishop d2. Controlling both sides of the board. Rook a8 makes sense because white's rook controls the A file. Rooks come off, and now a brilliant move possible is played now, Because of the king retreat, the knight can now go to g1. And it can go to f3 to hit d4 and a4. Beautiful way for the knight to come back in the game. 1, 2, 3, 4, hitting both pawns. The queen's knight has become the king's knight. Bishop c6, trying to open up this diagonal. Well, if you ever play f5, that hangs as well. That's why I drew so many arrows. Knight f3, both pawns are under attack. d5 play, knight g5 is very interesting to defend in this way. Gatta chooses e5, but now the knight comes in. King up, bishop retreats, because the truth is the bishop is biting on granite. Retreat the bishop, and beautiful move here by Gatta, showing understanding. Class understanding in my opinion. By getting rid of this bishop, the queen can actually now come in on a dark square. Not only that, without the dark squared bishop, these pawns on dark squares are now even weaker. Class move by Gatta. Rook g1, please bear this idea in mind. Sacrifice. Why? Because the knight is only being defended by a pawn. This idea is always lurking, and maybe this is why Gatta played it, because if there's ever a move like bishop here, you can defend it. Ah, okay, now I get it. Just by explaining it out loud in a YouTube video, I now get it. I think that's another idea why he wants to trade the dark bishop. Queen here makes sense, you want to defend the pawn. Yeah, because on the previous move you were attacking that pawn as well. I see, yeah, okay, going back here, the knight defends both, but now the knight comes in. We want the knight back, I see. So the guy, 2300, defends with the queen, the bishops come off, and now queen b4 check. Beautiful geometry from Gatta. Queen e1, queen out to b4, hit with check, and now we're picking up d4. Get the file. The king's rook has now become the queen's rook. The rooks come off. By the way, yeah, you got to trade or else. I think this is too dangerous. Yeah. Trade the rooks off, but now this is weak. Come back, okay, a few retreating moves, and that pawn is gone, which is what black did many moves ago. Just launched the h pawn, but a far advanced pawn can turn out to be a weakness. If you take, then take. Game over. You're 2 pawns now. 2300 takes, but now you take with the king. Maybe he missed this move. Take. Yeah, don't take with the queen. Why are you giving some chance? This might still be winning, but this is not how you play. You take with the king, keep it clean, finish it off. Just a little bit of nonsense. Retreat the knight. The king is perfectly safe here because there is no check. Queen tries to come in on a dark square. Nope, shut it out. Get your pawns rolling. Every dark square controlled by the knight. Let's offer a queen trade. Why not? Get the bishop in and also start an attack. No funny business here. Drop the queen back. Not only that, it's not really about dropping the king back. It's about this. Check, and you get the queen in the game. Notice the king was here a couple moves ago, but now queen comes in here, and that is mate. This knight does a brilliant job of covering the dark squares. Game over. So that is how Gatta Kamsky 2660 takes down a 2300 in a titled Tuesday match. And here we go. The final game, which you've all been waiting for, Magnus Carlsen versus Duda. We had the same opening, or do it. When I was trying to find games at the highest level, I couldn't really find too many top player against top player playing f4. And I'm trying to understand what's up. I think at the highest level, the move knight c3 is a very subtle waiting move. You might be thinking, what's he talking about? If you play knight c6, top players have played bishop here. Top players have even played knight f3, because if you play a move like this or this or this, d4 is next. And we get into an open Sicilian. It's a subtle waiting move at the highest level. After knight c3, if you play a move like g6, which we're going to see, or d6, we're going to see the same move. So first up, I'm going to go through, let's say, the first 9 moves of Nakamura versus MVL. Hikaru played d4, take. Strange, isn't it? We're not committing with f4 at the highest level. Drop the queen back. What a weird setup. What's the point in blocking in the bishop? You plan to go b3. Bishop b2. If, well, MVL struck in the center with d5, we can take and castle, and then the game goes on. This blue arrow is to show that in these kind of positions, we're not playing f4. Knight c3, Magnus Carlsen against Jan Duda. The guy played g6 and now d4. We're not playing f4 now. That's what I'm noticing. We're playing d4. Take, and now we play this move. Queen attacks the rook, you got to block, and now bishop e3. The pawn structure is now totally different from what we've seen before. This is now an open Sicilian. Drop the queen back, f3, and now it's like a dragon. The dragon bishop here. If white plays knight d4, it's just a normal looking dragon position, but Magnus makes it up. This is so impressive. I've never ever seen this. The knight's on f4. Normally it's in the center by move 4. Attacking the bishop. Does Jan Duda move it? No, that's the thing. If you take, if the bishop comes out, you can play a move like queen d7 to defend, or even queen c8. So what do I mean? Take. Double pawns are weak? No, they're not weak. That move looks interesting as well. Because if you castle, maybe a move like knight here, you're attacking this, you're defending. A different way to play. Magnus didn't really want to go for this. I think these pawns are very strong, covering central squares. Let's go back a few moves. In this position, castle played, castling into an attack, h4. This knight is beautiful because it's so rare in these kind of Sicilian positions to have a knight which actually helps the advance of the h-pawn. Wow. Knight e5, h5, here we go. Knight, rook, pawn, bishop, queen, all in the attack. Typical way to play. Put the bishop here, get it off, get the queen into the h-file. Bishop c4 offering a trade. You don't really want to go for this, because now we are planning to pick that bishop up like this. You do not want to go for these kind of positions. Black will have the dragon bishop that white does not have. So going back a few moves, don't go for this trade. It's a clever idea from Duda. Magnus doesn't have to take it. He takes the h pawn. He opens up the h file instead. Take. And now knight retreats because the bishop is now coming into h6, offering a trade. Queen can also come in. Bishop h6, knight h5, blocking the h file. But no, doesn't work. Take with the king. If you take with this, that's game over. And then this. Can't go, well, you can go g5, but just be clean. Take g4. And then we're in. The h file opens up, it is game over. Magnus makes it look too easy in this game. Going back a few moves. Here, Jan took with the king. Now you can't go g4, because we can all chuck a queen in one move. No. So let's prepare it by castling, right? Or bishop e2, right? Wrong. Magnus just sacrifices right here, right now, with rook takes knight. It's a classic sacrifice in the dragon. You give up your rook for the knight because you blow open the king. After this capture, the queen now comes in with check. Check. That's why this idea works. When the queen comes in, you take the pawns with check. So even if you can't finish off the guy in a few moves, you're still going to get a few pawns. The game goes on. Or maybe the game is over right here, right now. You can go back here with check, get the king on the file, but after bishop d3, the thing is, Jan Duda resigned. So just playing on a little bit, why did he resign? Well, the king needs to castle, so then the rook can go to the h-file and then it'll be mate. But it is illegal to castle at the moment. Magnus blocks the file. Castling is next. Let's say black plays queen out, threatening a check to disturb the forces. Check first. Forcing the king to the h-file, and then you castle. Now rook is mate, and there's no good way to stop it. If you block with the bishop, you don't take it, no, because then queen here, the game goes on. White's still totally winning, but you don't want to go for this, no way. Going back a few moves after this, just be professional. Just put the rook there anyway, game over. And if you play this, game over. Game over. You are going to win the queen. So that is how Magnus plays it. Looks like these top players, they're not going for f4. They're playing this knight c3 waiting move to see what black will do. And depending on the pawn push, like this or like this, Nakamura. You might strike with d4 and then get this kind of position. So weird, isn't it? That could be a difference between people at the top and then people at a lower level. They're willing to switch it up. Maybe go open Sicilian, but a weird one where the queen is in the center. That's what I learned from studying Carlsen's game for this video. What opening do you want to see next to go from chess beginner all the way up to a top player? Let me know in the comments below.